The city was alive with the sound of rain bouncing off sidewalks and cars splashing through puddles. People hurried along the streets, clutching their coats and umbrellas, trying to escape the sudden downpour. Among them was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, who moved quickly, weaving through the crowd. His mind was elsewhere, thinking about the endless stack of work waiting for him at home, a project he had been pouring his soul into for months. He barely noticed the world around him, focused entirely on getting home before the storm became worse. He was nearly past the small corner store when a movement caught his eye. A woman was struggling with an umbrella that kept flipping inside out. Her bag of groceries teetered dangerously in her hands, and she seemed completely unaware of the slippery sidewalk beneath her. She moved carefully, trying to balance herself, but the wet surface made every step uncertain. Without thinking, he instinctively stepped toward her. "Wait. Watch out," he called as he reached her side. Before she could respond, her foot slipped, and she started to fall. He grabbed her arm just in time, steadying her and keeping her from hitting the ground. The groceries tumbled slightly, but he managed to catch them with one hand while keeping the other around her shoulder. "Thank you," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and relief. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, still trying to regain her balance. Rain dripped from her hair and coat, but there was a spark in her expression that made him feel oddly warm inside despite the cold rain. "No problem," he said, shrugging and trying to make it seem casual, though his heart was beating faster than normal. "These sidewalks are dangerous when they're wet." She gave a small laugh, a little embarrassed, and adjusted her umbrella, finally getting it to hold properly against the wind. "I don't know why I even try to carry so many things at once," she said, shaking her head. "I always end up making a mess." He smiled, handing back the groceries. "It happens to the best of us. Here, let me help you with that." They moved together toward the nearest cafe, a small place with warm lights glowing through the rainy haze. Inside, the smell of coffee and pastries wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. They both shook off their umbrellas and hung their wet coats on the stand near the door. "You must be soaked," he said, noticing how wet her coat had become. "Just a little," she replied, brushing some water from her hair. "I was trying to make it to the store quickly, but the rain had other plans." They found a small table by the window where the rain streaked patterns across the glass. She set down her groceries, and he gestured to the empty chair opposite her. "Can I get you something to drink?" he asked. "A coffee would be nice," she said. "Black, please." He nodded and went to the counter to order. While waiting, he glanced around the cafe, noticing the cozy atmosphere. People sat with laptops or books, lost in their own worlds. The hum of conversation and the occasional clink of a cup made the space feel alive, yet intimate. When he returned with their drinks, she smiled again, and for a moment there was a quiet connection between them. A sense of shared humanity in the midst of the storm outside, so he said, trying to break the silence. "Do you come here often?" She chuckled softly. "Not really. I usually grab something quickly and go, but today I guess I got lucky. Or maybe unlucky, depending on how you see it," she added, nodding toward the rain. He laughed. "I think you got lucky. Otherwise, I might have been walking by, too focused on my own world to notice anyone. I guess sometimes you have to be in the right place at the right time." She looked at him thoughtfully, then smiled. "Maybe so. Or maybe some people just notice when someone needs help, no matter the circumstances." He felt a little embarrassed under her gaze, realizing how simple an act had led them to this moment. He wasn't expecting anything from helping her, just the satisfaction of knowing he had done the right thing. Yet here they were, sharing coffee and talking as if they had known each other for much longer than a few minutes. "I'm glad you're okay," he said quietly, stirring his drink. "Me too," she replied. "It's funny how one small moment can change the entire course of your day, isn't it?" He nodded, thinking about the truth in her words. Life had a way of surprising you, often when you least expected it. Sometimes it was just a matter of paying attention to the little things, the people around you, and the opportunities to make a difference. The conversation drifted naturally, moving from small talk about the weather to stories about their daily lives. He learned that she worked in a field that required sharp thinking and creativity, though she didn't boast about it. She was humble, and her passion for her work shone through in the way she described it. He shared a little about his own work, keeping it light, not wanting to overwhelm her with technical details. She listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and making comments that showed she was engaged. For a few hours, the world outside ceased to exist, the rain tapping softly against the window, creating a private bubble where two strangers had become unlikely companions. Eventually, the storm began to ease, and the streets outside slowly emptied. They stood, gathering their coats and belongings. The moment of partying came sooner than he wished. "Thank you again," she said, her smile warm and sincere. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." He felt a strange sense of humility, realizing that his simple action had made a difference in someone's life. "It was nothing, really. I'm just glad you're okay." She paused, looking at him with an unreadable expression. "Maybe someday, the universe will repay you for your kindness," she said softly. He laughed lightly, unsure if she was serious or just being poetic. "I guess we'll see about that." They walked out into the damp streets together for a few steps before parting ways. He watched her disappear into the crowd, feeling a strange pull in his chest. Something about this encounter lingered with him, a sense that this meeting was more than mere chance. He continued on his way home, the rain now a gentle drizzle, and thought about the unpredictability of life. How a single moment, a single choice, could create ripples in ways he could not yet imagine. He wondered if he would ever see her again, but more than that, he felt a quiet satisfaction knowing he had acted without hesitation when it mattered. That night, as he lay in bed, he replayed the events of the day in his mind. The image of her smile, the relief in her eyes, and the warmth of her presence stayed with him. It was a small but meaningful memory, a reminder that kindness, even in the simplest form, had the power to touch lives in ways that could not be measured. And for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of connection, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, life had a way of bringing people together when they least expected it. A few days after the rain-soaked encounter, he found himself walking down the same busy street. The city seemed different now, less rushed, as if the memory of the previous meeting had softened his usual hurry. He was thinking about his work, of course, but there was also an unshakable curiosity about her. Who was she really? And why did the brief connection feel so significant? As he approached the corner where he had first helped her, he noticed a familiar figure across the street. It was her, balancing the same small umbrella, and she was laughing at something her phone had displayed. For a moment, their eyes met, and he smiled instinctively. To his surprise, she waved. He hesitated for a second, unsure if he should cross the street, but then he found himself walking toward her. She was looking up at him with a mixture of recognition and warmth. The crowd bustled around them, but in that moment, it felt like the rest of the city had disappeared. "Hey," he said, a little breathless from walking quickly. "Fancy seeing you here again." "I guess the city is smaller than it seems," she replied, her smile genuine. She moved her umbrella to give him space and gestured to the cafe nearby. "Do you want to grab a coffee? Seems like fate is nudging us to talk again." He laughed a little nervously. "I wouldn't say no to that." Inside the cafe, they found a quiet corner and ordered their drinks. The barista handed them steaming cups, and the aroma of roasted coffee beans filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of rain lingering on their coats. Sitting across from her, he felt the odd mix of familiarity and excitement. As though he had known her longer than a few days, they began to talk casually. First about the weather, the rain, and then about the city itself. She had a way of noticing details he often overlooked. The old bookstore across the street, the way people hurried past the corner vendors selling hot pretzels, the small mural hidden behind a row of bicycles. He listened, intrigued by the way she saw the world, so observant and thoughtful. "I noticed you like to look closely at things," he said, smiling. "Most people just rush by." "Ah!" She shrugged lightly. "I guess I just pay attention. Life is full of small details that tell bigger stories. Sometimes you just have to slow down to see them." He found himself nodding, realizing she was right. He was always in a rush, always focused on the next task, the next deadline. Seeing her pause to notice the little things reminded him of a different way of moving through the world. Their conversation shifted naturally to work. She mentioned the projects she was handling, her voice calm but animated. He was fascinated not just by the work itself, but by her approach, careful, strategic, and full of purpose. She explained things without boasting, yet it was clear she was highly capable. She was someone who carried authority quietly, without needing to announce it. He shared more about his own work, the challenges, the small victories, and the occasional setbacks. She listened attentively, asking questions that showed genuine interest. She didn't just nod politely. She seemed invested in understanding, in connecting. He found himself opening up more than he usually did, surprised at the ease with which the words came. As the rain continued to fall outside, they lost track of time. The cafe filled and emptied around them, but inside their small corner, there was a sense of calm, as though the world had narrowed to the two of them. Laughter and stories flowed naturally, punctuated by moments of thoughtful silence, where each seemed content to simply exist in the other's presence at one point. She laughed at a story he shared about a particularly chaotic day at work. Her laughter was light, genuine, and it made him smile. It wasn't just a polite reaction. It was the kind of laugh that made a person feel heard and appreciated. He realized that he had not laughed like that in a long time, not without restraint or caution. "You make things sound easier than they are," she said, still smiling. "I don't know how you manage to keep your sense of humor with all that responsibility." Shrugged, a little embarrassed. "Sometimes humor is all you have left when nothing else seems to go right. It keeps you going." She nodded thoughtfully. "I think that's why people like you are rare. You balance seriousness with a lightness that most forget. It's refreshing." The words lingered in his mind, not because he didn't believe them, but because they came from someone who clearly meant them. There was an authenticity to her attention that made him feel seen, in a way that was unusual and deeply comforting. As their conversation meandered from work to small personal stories, he noticed that she had a quiet confidence that drew people in without demanding it. He found himself wanting to know more, not just about her work, but about her life, her passions, her dreams. Yet, there was a subtle restraint in her that made her seem both approachable and slightly mysterious. "I should probably get going soon," she said after some time, glancing at her watch. "But I'm really glad we met again." "I feel like we picked up right where we left off," he smiled, a mix of satisfaction and longing. "Me too. I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon, but I'm glad I did." They stepped out into the drizzle, the air cool but refreshing after the warmth of the cafe. They walked a few steps together, talking in lighter tones, their voices blending with the sound of the city. The familiarity of their previous encounter made the conversation effortless, almost as if it had always been part of their routine. At the corner where they would part ways, she turned to him with a small, thoughtful expression. "You know, I think it's rare to meet someone who helps without expecting anything in return. It's even rarer to meet someone who does it genuinely." He felt a flush of warmth at her words. "I didn't think much about it at the time. I just did what felt right," she smiled, the kind of smile that hinted at more than words could say. "Sometimes doing the right thing leads to unexpected moments. Today is one of those moments, I think," he nodded, realizing the truth in her words. Life had a way of connecting people in ways they couldn't predict, often through the simplest actions. And though he didn't yet understand how significant this connection might become, he felt a quiet certainty that their paths crossing again was not just a coincidence. They exchanged a brief but sincere farewell, and he watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd. The memory of her smile stayed with him as he continued his own path, feeling lighter, more aware of the unexpected beauty in the city around him. The encounter had reminded him that life wasn't only about deadlines and responsibilities. It was also about noticing the moments and people that made the journey meaningful. As he walked home, thought about how easily a simple act of kindness could ripple through life. Saving her had seemed like a small gesture, almost forgettable at the time. Yet, meeting her again had revealed a connection neither of them could ignore. The thought lingered in his mind, a quiet anticipation that perhaps this meeting was just the beginning of something much larger than he could imagine. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and he felt a new sense of perspective. Moments like these, brief and unexpected, were the ones that could change the course of a day, a week, or even a life. And as he turned the corner toward home, he couldn't help but wonder what other surprises the world had in store, especially when he least expected them. The feeling was not just hope, it was a deep, stirring sense of possibility that made every step feel lighter and every breath a little fuller. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became more frequent, though they never forced them. It happened naturally, crossing paths at a cafe, a brief conversation on the street, or sharing a small laugh over something trivial. Each encounter built a quiet rhythm, sense of familiarity that neither had expected but both welcomed. He noticed subtle changes in himself. He found himself pausing more often, observing the city with new eyes. Noticing the small details she seemed to see naturally, the way sunlight reflected off the wet pavement, the pattern of shadows cast by old lampposts, the expressions on people's faces as they hurried along. Life, he realized, was richer when shared, even in small ways. With someone who truly paid attention. One evening, as he left work, he saw her waiting outside a small bookstore he often passed, but rarely entered. She waved, and he felt that familiar pull in his chest, an excitement tempered by calm. They walked together inside, the smell of books and paper greeting them warmly. The store was quiet, cozy, and slightly musty, with tall shelves reaching toward the ceiling. The faint light of the late afternoon sun spilled through the windows, creating golden highlights on the wooden floors. She moved slowly, running her fingers along the spines of books, pausing at a few titles and reading the descriptions aloud. He followed, smiling, finding comfort in her presence. There was something about the way she moved, thoughtful and deliberate, that made him want to slow down as well. They eventually found a small section filled with novels and old travel books. She picked up a book, showing him the cover. "I've always loved stories about journeys," she said, her voice soft. "Not just physical journeys, but personal ones too. They remind me that growth often comes from unexpected places." He nodded, intrigued. "I think that's true. Life doesn't hand you growth on a silver platter. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, struggles, or even small acts of kindness that change everything." She smiled, impressed by his insight. They spent hours browsing, occasionally exchanging thoughts about books or sharing stories from their own lives. It was effortless, natural, and deeply satisfying. He realized that these moments, seemingly small and ordinary, were shaping something important between them. After leaving the bookstore, they walked through the city streets as the sun dipped low in the sky. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain from earlier in the day. They stopped at a quiet park, sitting on a bench beneath a large tree. The city noises felt distant, as though they had stepped into a private world, away from the rush and chaos. "I like being around you," she said after a while, her gaze thoughtful. "It feels easy, like I don't have to pretend to be anyone else." He felt warmth spread through him, a feeling of connection that went beyond simple attraction. "I feel the same way. It's rare to find someone you can just be yourself with." They talked about their families, childhood memories, and dreams they had once thought too ambitious to pursue. She listened intently when he spoke, never interrupting, always encouraging him to share more. There was a subtle admiration in her eyes that made him feel seen and respected in a way he rarely experienced. In return, he noticed her hesitations, the quiet moments where she seemed to reflect deeply before speaking. He understood that she carried responsibilities and pressures he could only imagine. Yet she never flaunted her accomplishments or authority. She let her character speak for itself. It was rare and compelling, and he found himself drawn to her not just for her presence, but for the integrity and strength she displayed quietly. They ended the evening walking through the softly lit streets, sharing stories and laughter. He felt a sense of contentment he hadn't known he needed. With her, life seemed both simpler and more meaningful. Even ordinary things like the crunch of leaves beneath their feet or the scent of freshly baked bread from a nearby shop felt significant in the following weeks. Their bond continued to grow. They met to share small adventures, visiting a flea market, exploring a hidden garden, or sitting by the river watching the reflections of city lights dance on the water. With each encounter, he learned more about her patience, her intelligence, her quiet determination. and she, in turn, seemed genuinely interested in his thoughts, his work, and the small passions that drove him. One afternoon, they found themselves in a small art gallery tucked away on a quiet street. Paintings and sculptures filled the room, each piece telling its own story. She moved slowly, studying each artwork with care, her eyes lingering on details most people would miss. He walked beside her, noticing not just the art, but the way she reacted to it, the slight tilt of her head, the thoughtful pauses, the occasional smile or quiet laugh. "Art reveals something about people," she said softly, almost to herself. "How they see the world, what moves them, what they value." He considered her words, thinking about their own interactions. He realized that every conversation, every shared moment, was like a brushstroke, slowly painting a picture of understanding and connection between them. As they left the gallery, the sky was turning a deep shade of orange and purple. They walked side by side, their conversation light, but filled with meaning. It was during these ordinary yet profound moments that he began to understand the depth of what was forming between them. One evening, after a long day at work, he received a message from her, a simple note asking if he wanted to meet for a walk. Without hesitation, he agreed. They met at a quiet park near the river, the air filled with the soft sounds of water and distant city life. They walked slowly, talking about their day, sharing thoughts and small observations. It was peaceful, a rare time to pause and simply exist together. As the weeks turned into months, the connection deepened. He realized that his feelings were evolving, shifting from admiration and curiosity to something more profound. He felt a protective instinct, a desire to support her, as she had unknowingly supported him through her presence and attention. And she, he sensed, was developing trust and a quiet reliance on him as well. There was no rush, no pressure, only the gradual unfolding of mutual respect and affection. Their interactions were marked by understanding and patience, allowing each to reveal themselves in small, meaningful ways. He found himself looking forward to their meetings, not just for the company, but for the perspective she brought into his life. Through these experiences, he also learned to be more open about himself. He shared his dreams and insecurities, the things he often kept hidden from colleagues or acquaintances. And she listened, responding with empathy and encouragement. He began to realize that their bond was not just emotional, but also deeply human connection built on understanding, trust, and the subtle recognition of each other's worth. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves under a shared umbrella, walking through quiet streets. He noticed the way she adjusted the umbrella to shield them both, the way she moved carefully, as if aware of every detail. It reminded him of the first time he had saved her, and he smiled inwardly at the symmetry of the moment. "You know," she said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I've met many people in my life, but few leave an impression like this. It's not just about kindness or conversation. It's about presence, about being genuinely there for someone." He felt a deep resonance in her words. "I feel the same way." It's rare to find someone who makes ordinary moments feel significant. As the rain continued to fall softly around them, they walked side by side, a quiet understanding between them. Neither rushed, neither pushed, allowing the connection to grow naturally, quietly, and deeply. He realized that the bond they shared was becoming an essential part of his life. It's a source of joy and reflection that went beyond the ordinary. By the time they parted that evening, he felt a profound sense of contentment. Their journey was far from over, and he knew that challenges and surprises awaited them. But for now, he was grateful for the presence of someone who had entered his life unexpectedly. Someone who had shown him that connection, understanding, and shared moments were among the most valuable experiences one could have. As he walked home, the city around him felt alive in a different way. Each street, each light, each sound carried the weight of shared experience and quiet reflection. He realized that life, in all its complexity, was made richer by the people who noticed, cared, and simply showed up. And he knew, with a quiet certainty, that her presence in his life was one of those rare and transformative gifts. It had been a few months since their first meeting in the rain, and the bond between them had grown steadily. They spent more time together, Whether wandering through quiet streets, sharing meals at small cafes, or exploring new parts of the city, each encounter revealed new layers of understanding, trust, and quiet admiration. He was working on a personal project, something he had been developing for years. It was a small but ambitious idea, one that could change the direction of his career if he could get the right support. Despite his hard work and late nights, he had faced rejection after rejection from potential backers, leaving him frustrated and uncertain. He had shared his struggles with her in bits and pieces, but she had never pushed or judged, simply listened and offered encouragement. One afternoon, he received an invitation from her to meet at a cafe downtown. He felt a flutter of curiosity and anticipation. When he arrived, she was already there, seated at a small table by the window. Her calm presence had a way of grounding him, and he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he approached. They exchanged greetings, settling into their chairs. The usual small talk flowed easily at first, about the city, the weather, and recent books they had discovered. But soon, she leaned forward slightly, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I wanted to ask you about your project," she said. "You've mentioned it before, but I'd like to hear more. What's the vision behind it?" He took a deep breath, explaining the concept, the challenges, and the potential it held. He spoke passionately, feeling her genuine interest and attention, which gave him more confidence than he had felt in months. She listened without interruption, her eyes reflecting understanding and consideration. When he finished, there was a moment of silence, not awkward, but reflective. Then she spoke, her voice calm but deliberate. "It's impressive. I can see how much effort and thought you've put into it. It's rare to see someone so dedicated and thoughtful about what they want to achieve." Felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He had been pouring himself into this project alone, unsure if anyone truly appreciated the depth of his commitment. Her acknowledgement meant more than he could express. "I've faced a lot of setbacks," he admitted, "and I'm not sure how to get the support I need. It's frustrating to keep pushing forward when so many doors seem closed."
Ow.
"I understand. But sometimes it's not just about pushing against doors. It's about finding the right opportunity and the right people who see your vision." He felt a glimmer of hope, tempered by uncertainty. He didn't know the extent of her influence or how much she could help, but he trusted her judgment. They continued to talk, exploring possible ways to move forward. Her questions and insights showing, her sharp mind and keen understanding of the challenges he faced. As the conversation progressed, he began to realize that her presence alone was empowering. Her calm confidence and careful consideration made him feel capable and supported. He shared his doubts and fears more openly than he had with anyone else, and she responded with encouragement, not advice, allowing him to find his own path while offering guidance when needed. "Sometimes," she said thoughtfully, "it's not about taking immediate action, but about preparing the ground, making sure when the right moment comes you're ready to step forward." He nodded, appreciating the wisdom in her words. They talked for hours, mapping out ideas, considering possibilities, and reflecting on the obstacles in front of him. Her presence made the discussion feel less like a problem to solve and more like a shared journey. Later, as they stepped out of the cafe, the sky was beginning to turn a soft pink from the setting sun. The streets were quieter, and the cool evening air carried the faint scent of coffee and rain. They walked side by side, discussing lighter topics. But the underlying current of support and understanding remained. He realized that she had become an important part of his life, not only as a companion, but as someone who could help him navigate the uncertainties he faced. Yet, he remained unaware of the full extent of her influence. He knew she was successful and respected in her field, but he had no idea how her decisions could directly impact his future. Over the next few days, he continued to refine his project, inspired by their conversation. He poured himself into the work with renewed energy, considering ideas they had discussed and applying her insights in practical ways. It was as if her belief in him had unlocked a part of his own confidence he hadn't realized was missing. Meanwhile, she observed quietly without intrusion. She noticed his dedication, the thoughtfulness in his approach, and the integrity he maintained even under pressure. She had met many people in her career, some brilliant, some determined, but few with the combination of skill, perseverance, and character that he displayed. She found herself considering the possibility of supporting him, though she kept this to herself, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. One evening, he was working late in his small apartment, reviewing notes and sketches, when his phone buzzed with a message from her, a simple invitation to meet at a quiet park near the river. He felt a mix of anticipation and curiosity, unsure what she wanted to discuss. He quickly finished his work and headed out. When he arrived, she was already there, sitting on a bench with a calm and thoughtful expression. The river reflected the city lights, creating a serene backdrop. They walked along the path together, talking in gentle tones, the conversation flowing easily from personal matters to reflections on life and work. Finally, as they paused near a small fountain, she looked at him with a quiet intensity. "I've been thinking about what you told me about your project and your vision. It's clear how much it means to you and how much effort you've invested." He felt his heart rate quicken, sensing the significance in her tone. "Yes, it's everything I've been working toward, but I'm still struggling to find the support I need." She nodded. "I know, and I think you've shown remarkable dedication and integrity in the process. It's not easy to pursue something so challenging, especially when so many obstacles appear." He looked at her, unsure of what she was about to say, yet feeling that this moment carried weight. "I appreciate you saying that. It means more than I can express." She took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I believe in what you're doing. I've seen how committed you are, how thoughtful and careful your approach is. I want to help you move forward, to give you the opportunity to make this vision a reality." His breath caught. He hadn't anticipated this. The idea that she could influence the trajectory of his project had never occurred to him. He struggled to find words, caught between disbelief and gratitude. I don't know what to say. Thank you. This could change everything." She smiled gently. "You've earned it. Your dedication, your character, and your passion have convinced me that this is worth supporting." In that moment, he realized that the woman he had saved months ago had, without him knowing, become a key figure in shaping his future. The act of kindness he had shown her had created a ripple that now returned in a profoundly meaningful way. He felt a mix of awe and humility, understanding how interconnected their lives had become through chance, choice, and shared humanity. They sat on the bench for a while longer, discussing next steps, ideas, and plans. The conversation was practical, yet charged with an underlying excitement, a sense that possibilities were suddenly opening that had seemed impossible before. He felt inspired, motivated, and supported in ways he had never experienced. As they eventually stood to leave, the city lights shimmering on the water, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the support she had offered, but for the entire journey that had led them to this point, the chance encounter in the rain, the casual conversations, the shared moments of reflection and laughter, walking home that evening. He reflected on the unexpected ways life could unfold, how a single act of kindness, a moment of presence, could influence not only one life, but another, in ways that were invisible at first. He realized that the future was not solely shaped by effort or ambition, but also by the people who crossed one's path and the choices they made. That night, as he prepared for bed, he felt a sense of possibility and purpose, unlike anything he had felt before. The road ahead was still challenging, but he no longer felt alone. He had someone who believed in him, whose trust and insight had the power to transform his vision into reality. And though he hadn't known it at first, he understood now that sometimes the people we meet in fleeting moments can hold the keys to our greatest opportunities and most profound growth. The morning of the meeting arrived with clear skies and a gentle warmth that contrasted the stormy day when they had first met. He had spent the previous night preparing, reviewing his presentation, and anticipating every possible question. Despite his preparation, he felt a nervous energy coursing through him. This meeting was different. It wasn't just another chance. It could define the next chapter of his life. He arrived early at the office, a sleek modern building filled with quiet confidence. The lobby was calm, with soft music playing and sunlight streaming through tall windows. He checked in and waited, trying to calm the nervous rhythm of his heartbeat. He rehearsed his words silently, thinking of every detail he had polished over the past months. When the doors finally opened, she was there, as composed and confident as ever. She greeted him with a warm smile, the kind that instantly eased some of the tension he felt. Her presence was reassuring, not because she was powerful, but because she believed in him. That belief gave him a sense of courage he hadn't realized he needed. They walked into the meeting room together. It was spacious, with a long table and chairs arranged neatly around it. The room was filled with other professionals who had been brought in to review and discuss his project. He introduced himself, shaking hands, and then noticed her subtle nods of encouragement throughout the room. Her quiet support was grounding, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this moment. He began his presentation, speaking clearly with the passion and dedication he felt for the project. As he explained his vision, he noticed the attentive expressions of the listeners. He answered questions with honesty, admitting challenges when they arose and explaining the steps he had taken to overcome them. His sincerity seemed to resonate, and he found a confidence that surprised him. It was as though her presence lent him strength, allowing him to speak not only with knowledge but with conviction. When the discussion turned to funding and strategic support, he felt a familiar uncertainty creeping in. He knew the stakes were high, and the outcome could change everything. Yet she intervened subtly, guiding the conversation, highlighting aspects of his project that had not been fully appreciated. Drawing attention to his meticulous planning and thoughtful approach, her influence was evident, but it was done with grace. She didn't overshadow him or impose her opinion. Instead, she provided perspective, helping the others understand the value of his vision. He felt a mix of awe and gratitude, realizing how much her insight could tip the balance. As the meeting concluded, there was a moment of silence followed by nods of approval and thoughtful discussion among the attendees. He waited anxiously, not daring to speak too soon, and then she looked at him, her eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. He understood instantly that the decision was favorable. After the meeting, he stepped into the corridor together, and he turned to her, words catching in his throat. I can't thank you enough. I don't know how to express what this means. She smiled gently. You don't need to. You've earned this through your hard work, dedication, and integrity. I only helped others see what you have been showing all along. He felt a wave of emotion, a mix of relief, gratitude, and humility. The realization settled in that the woman he had saved months ago had now played a key role in shaping his future. That simple act of kindness, so long ago, had set in motion a chain of events that he could never have anticipated. They walked outside into the bright afternoon, the city buzzing softly around them. He felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted, replaced by hope and excitement. The possibilities ahead seemed limitless, not just because of the support he had received, but because of the connection they had forged. It's strange to think, he said after a while, that all of this started on a rainy day, with me just trying to help someone. I had no idea it could lead here. She laughed softly, a warm sound that carried through the street. Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes, the smallest actions create the biggest changes. You never know how one moment can ripple through time. He nodded, reflecting on the truth in her words. He had been focused on immediate concerns, deadlines, and work, never imagining that a simple gesture could have such far-reaching consequences. Now, he understood that life was interconnected in ways he had yet to fully comprehend. Over the next few days, the practical steps to implement the project began. He met with teams, planned schedules, and navigated challenges with renewed confidence. Throughout it all, she remained a quiet but steady presence, offering insight when needed and encouragement when doubt crept in. He noticed how naturally she moved between professional authority and personal understanding, helping him see not just the technical possibilities, but the human potential of his project. One evening, after a long day of planning, they found themselves walking through a park near the river. The sun was setting, casting golden light over the water, and the city felt calm and reflective. They walked side by side, the quiet comfort between them stronger than ever. I'm proud of you, she said softly, breaking the silence. Not just for what you've achieved, but for how you've carried yourself through it. You've been thoughtful, patient, and persistent. That's rare. He looked at her, moved by her words. I couldn't have done it without you. Your belief in me. It made all the difference. She shook her head slightly, a humble smile on her face. You did the work. I only helped others see it. You earned everything that's coming to you.